then the arms of the T-shirt went up into the air like that, lifted up. And of course I ran over, yanked it off the coat hanger it was on, threw it onto the ground, stomped on it a few times. Then I think I literally ran out of the flat at that time.
You just heard Karen Hamilton-Viall describing one of her earliest paranormal experiences, a moment that still gives her chills decades later. I'm your host, Rob, and this is Oops All Ghost, a place where people share their stories and experiences in the paranormal. Our guest, Karen, has spent most of her life crossing paths with the paranormal, from ghostly footsteps in an Edwardian flat to strange winds swirling through century-old castles. Today, she's here to walk us through those moments, the sights, the sounds, and the stories that still linger long after the lights go out. So settle in, dim the lights, and let's dive in to the haunted world of Karen Hamilton-Viall. How are you doing, Karen?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, so I read a few of your stories there, and I think the youngest one was at the age of 19. Is that correct?
It's certainly one of the youngest. I think I possibly had one slightly earlier, but I can go into that later if you like.
Yeah, if you want to start at 19 and then we can go back there.
Okay, so when I was 19, I moved out of home. I'd left art college. I decided it wasn't for me and I wanted to get a job. So I got a job as a hotel receptionist in Bromley in Kent. It's actually a suburb of London, so it's just on the edges of London. And it had a very early start at 7 a.m. So instead of my dad taking me all the way there, I decided to move into a flat with some friends. So it was an ex-boyfriend and a friend of his. So there were three of us in a top floor flat. I've never researched the age of the house, but I would guess it was probably Edwardian. So there was a lower floor flat that had a lady in when we first moved in, and we were in the top floor flat at the top of the stairs. And we had a shared communal hallway. And it started out okay at first. You know, I didn't notice anything. I wasn't thinking about ghosts. I'm not sure I even really believed in ghosts at the time. But then you would hear a thump, 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 thump of heavy footsteps going up the stairs in the middle of the night, you know, quite late usually, never in the daytime. But then it would stop. You'd think that the door at the top of the stairs would open, but it never did. And then a few minutes later, it would start again, thump, thump, thump. And we used to laugh about it at first, I think, probably because we were quite nervous about what this was. Yeah. But it would just keep going. And whenever we had anybody over to the house and said, have you ever felt anything strange in the house? They'd say, yeah, on the stairs. Very odd. But then it moved on to other things as well. So I only worked at the hotel for 6 weeks, a couple of months, something like that, not very long, before I decided it wasn't for me. You know, I wanted to do admin work instead. So I was at home a lot because my two flatmates were working out in a cafe, and they were out all hours, 12 hours a day working there. And things would happen when it was just me there. So the fire alarm went off for no reason, not cooking or doing anything like that at all. And I couldn't work out any reason why this fire alarm was going off. And you could say, oh, perhaps that's faulty equipment, but it was a bit odd. And at the time, this was the early 1990s, I'm going to say. I think it was about 1994. And there wasn't a lot of other electrical stuff in the house for any ghosts to set off at the time. Now you've got Ring doorbells, haven't you? And all sorts of things that they can interact with. But that was the only sort of electrical thing that I remember happening. But I do remember seeing him. It wasn't full on, straight on as I'm looking at you now, but as I was walking past the bathroom one day. So we had a tiny, tiny hallway with all 5 rooms off of it. I think 3 bedrooms, a bathroom and a kitchen. And I was walking past the bathroom and I saw a big man standing there, backlit by the window. And I thought it was my flatmate. I won't say his name, but I said, oh, hello. And then I took a couple of steps past And because I thought, oh, I've got to say something to him. I've got to need a conversation with him. So I took a couple of steps back, and then the figure wasn't there. So I remember clearly walking around the back of the bathroom door, looking in the bathtub. And I thought, this is very odd. And I remember looking in all their rooms. I obviously shouldn't have been looking through their rooms, but I looked under their beds and everywhere because I thought somebody's playing a joke on me. But nobody was in the flat. I was the only person there at that time. So it used to do, things like that quite often. The footsteps was probably the biggest thing it did, but I did see them as well. Probably the most alarming thing for me, one day when I was home alone, was the middle of the day, and because like I say, I'd given up the job at this time, and there was a T-shirt hanging on the back of the door, and it was a long sleeve T-shirt, and I could just remember feeling really odd. And I describe it like that feeling that you feel before a thunderstorm. Do you know what I mean? When it gets really heavy and there's almost an electric feeling in the air. And it felt just like that. And then the arms of the T-shirt went up into the air like that. They lifted up. And of course, I ran over, yanked it off the coat hanger it was on, threw it onto the ground, stomped on it a few times. Then I think I literally ran out of the flat at that time, because that really did scare me that time. And there'd be other smaller things like that. I remember a mirror going from one side of the room across to the other side for no particular reason.
Like just thrown across the
just
room.
Across the room. I wouldn't say, it's not like the Enfield poltergeist. It was nothing ever on that level. But it was enough to frighten the people that were living there. And I'm trying to recall, really, because it's a long time ago now. We're talking, over 30 years or so ago now. But I don't think I was there terribly long, maybe a year, perhaps 2 years, something like that, before my friend brought his own house and we all moved out together. So it was an odd time, but I do remember saying at one point, because I felt so frightened by this, whatever it was, I said, look, okay, I acknowledge you're here, but I've got to live here too. So let's kind of find a peace. And I do feel that it was better after that, whether that was just me feeling better because I said that or some other reason, I don't know. But it was very odd. It actually went down after that incident of me talking to it. And I felt a lot better about being in the flat alone after that. I know my friend, who was the girlfriend of the guy I was renting with, I know she had experiences, but she's never told me directly what her experiences are. Sadly, perhaps I should go and find out. I do feel now that I should have gone and investigated were there any strange deaths in the house. And I did think about the footsteps as well. Was it person downstairs? But she really wasn't there for very long. I don't think maybe more than a couple of months before she moved out. And the whole rest of the time that we were there, the downstairs flat was empty. So I know it couldn't have been somebody downstairs making that noise. It was an end terrace house, so possibly noise could have carried from next door. But we all felt it, this strange presence in the house.
Yeah, still like thinking you're alone and hearing the footsteps coming into play. That gives me goosebumps, even if it just creaks in my house in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine the intense feeling you had, and the way you described it, like I would be moved out of the house by day one.
Yeah, oddly, overall, it was just that one incident that was so particularly scary. I don't think any of us thought about moving out at the time. It was sort of cheap rent. Maybe that was why. I don't know. Maybe other people had experienced things there. But what I wish I'd had was a camera, because it was the early 90s and mobile phones weren't really a thing yet. So I didn't record anything. I don't think I even had a camera. And I was chatting to another chap recently, Liam Grave, who's written a book, The Lady in the Bay Window, about his experiences. And it was so similar. The same sort of things experienced. And it's made me wonder if there couldn't be some way to record this sort of thing where you can say, yes, footsteps, yes, tick, we had that sighting of the person, yeah, tick, fire alarm going off, because he had a fire alarm going off in the same way. But because his experiences are much more recent, like I say, he's had like Ring doorbells and baby monitors going off. He's caught things on that as well. people have microwaves now, don't they, going off on their own. All sorts of odd things happen sort of in the modern houses, but I didn't really have that sort of thing available at the time.
Like, what about now? You've had 7 experiences through your life. Have you had any recently with the era of cameras everywhere?
Not really, not much in this house. This house is 1969, so it's a relatively new house for England. And I've seen perhaps a couple of dark, shadowy figures. I had one when I was sitting on the toilet one time. I knew my husband was downstairs. I could hear him in the downstairs living room watching something, and the hall light was on, and I have a glass panel in the bathroom door, and I saw what looked like the shadow of a person just walking past. So I've seen a couple of figures like that over 20 years, though, so not really very much at all in this house. But most of my experiences have been a little while ago now. I don't have so many recently. Would you like to hear another one?
I'd love to.
So probably the next one after that was Chislehurst Caves. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a very old cave system, again in Bromley, southeast London. And I think it's thought that it was built in Saxon times. That's when it was started, and then medieval times and into the 19th century. So it's like a 1,000-year-old cave system. And they do regular tours of the caves. And on Sundays, they used to do extra long, hour-long tours. And they'd give you a little lantern to hold as well to make it more atmospheric.
And is it like a mine kind of cave, or just like something people just kind of like hung out and explored in?
I think it's mined. I had written down some of the history actually, so I could remember. So it's got World War I history where it was stored, used as an ammo dump. And then in World War II, it had 15,000 people living down there because it was used as an air raid shelter. It was used for mushroom cultivation, apparently, in the 19th century. So it's had a long history of different uses, but I think it was mining originally, yeah. But on part of the tour, I think it's supposed to have several ghosts, but I wasn't really thinking about ghosts at the time, but I hung back at the back of the crowd, and they were telling a story. I think it was about a cavalier. And I hung back, just sort of trying to soak in the atmosphere, and the rest of the tour just disappeared around that corner. And I remember looking down at the ground, and I had my lantern, and I saw a pair of booted feet walking past. And I'm a bit of a historian, so I sort of recognized them as sort of maybe, 17th century or about that sort of area, that sort of long, high, knee length, slightly pointed shoe, I suppose. And I saw this pair of legs walking past, and I was in quite, I suppose, a blank mindset. I wasn't really thinking about anything in particular. And I thought that was strange. And I looked down the, I'm going to say corridor, it's not a corridor, down the line where this person should have disappeared. And bear in mind that all the other people on this tour had disappeared around the corner, but there wasn't anybody there. And it was actually a dead end, this bit where I was looking. So I couldn't see anywhere where this figure could have gone. And the shoes did look very strange as well. And I just went, okay, and just carried on after the rest of the group to catch them up, because I didn't really want to be left behind in these tunnels, because, like I say, there's 22 miles of the tunnels and you really don't want to get lost down there.
Absolutely not.
But if you look it up, it's got a really good history for hauntings and things. I think including one man who may have died down there doing an investigation, I seem to recall.
Now, just to like paint the picture, you saw like just legs and shoes.
Just legs, yeah.
Behind a wall, or just like
no, just left to right in front of me. I was looking down, as if a person was standing there and you can't see their face, but they were walking left to right in front of me, and it was just a pair of legs sort of walking past. But when I looked up to see where the person had gone, because I thought it was a real person to start with, there was nobody there, and everyone else had, like I say, already disappeared around the corner, so it couldn't have been any of them. So I just remember going, "Whoa!" and then I catch up with the rest of the group after that. Quite a small experience, but an interesting one, I think.
That'd be really interesting. That's like a whole, like a movie scene right there. Picturing, the pan down towards the ground and seeing just the
Mm.
footsteps, and then whoosh, gone.
And I've had another quite big experience as well, which was, I think it was 2011, so a little while ago now. But I work in historic sites, and strangely, I have never had any experiences in 20 years working at a historic site. No, you've never seen a ghost, never heard a hint of one. But one particular time, we were working at a place called Bodiam Castle, which is in East Sussex, so sort of southern England. And it's a lovely place, really nice place to work. But we were staying a little way away with some friends who used to work at Bodiam. They let us stay where they were working now, which was Priory, which I think is in West Sussex. And it's a very old, former Augustinian priory built in the 13th century. And it's got a long history. So I don't know if you know English history, but in the 16th century, there's something called the dissolution of the monasteries, where Henry VIII sort of destroyed a lot of our monasteries and sort of took all their land and goods and things for himself. So a lot of them got destroyed about that point and turned into private houses. The house was used in World War II by Canadian troops, and it's got a long, long, long history. Now, my friends were working there, and they were staying in the top floor flat of the building, and it's quite a big, rambling building. Their flat is in an L shape, and you had the living room, sort of where the lounge where you sit and watch telly. Next to that was our bedroom we were staying in. Next to that was their bedroom, and then I think it went round the corner, and that's where the bathroom and kitchen were. So on the first night that we stayed there, I woke up in the small hours, about 2 a.m. I think it was, and I was woken by a loud dragging noise. It sounded like somebody was dragging heavy furniture. And I wasn't feeling very well that night. So I sort of said out loud, I'm not very well, just leave me alone. Because I was like, I don't need to deal with this right now. And I told my husband about it the next day. He hadn't heard it because he was quite a heavy sleeper. And I didn't tell my friends about it that I was staying with. And the next night, middle of the night, the dragging noise comes back again. And I said out loud, oh, you must be able to hear it. And my husband said, of course I can hear it. So we both got up, and the noise stopped, if I remember rightly. And I went along the L shape around the corner to where the kitchen and the bathroom were to see if there were any windows open, anything like that, anything that could be making the noise. And when I came back, he was standing outside the bedroom. The door to the lounge was closed. And he said, did you feel that? And I said, what? He said, like a whirlwind going around your head. And I said, no. And then as soon as I said that, I felt a whirlwind going around my head, like round and round. And we were like, oh. And for some reason, and I don't know why, we both then just went back to bed. And we were kicking ourselves. We were saying afterwards, why did we not go in the lounge? Neither of us went into the lounge to investigate. We just left that door shut and didn't go in there. So that was the end of my personal experience. But years and years later, I presume I'm allowed to mention TV shows and things, aren't I? Yeah.
Sorry, what was that?
I'm allowed to mention TV shows and things.
Yeah.
So there was a program called Extreme Ghosts, and it was somebody who was, again, living at Michelin Priory, a different person, not my friend that had lived there. And his experience was so similar to my own, with the dragging noise. Sounds almost like somebody was pulling a piano or a very heavy bit of furniture. And he had wind blowing around the room, that room that we had stayed in. He'd had this wind blowing around as well. And it was so similar. It was quite justifying that he'd had something happen to him that was so like what we'd experienced.
Wow. Sorry to stop you, but explain the whirlwind. Like, was your hair actually moving, or was it like the feeling sense around?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't like blowing out or anything, but it was like you can feel a breeze around your head, going, and you can just feel the breeze sort of kissing your skin and blowing around. And, I've never experienced anything else quite like that since, not even when you're outside. It doesn't normally eddy around you, does it? You might blow, at you. But this was definitely around because you could feel it just going round.
Kind of like wrap around you.
Yeah. But my friends who lived there said they'd never experienced anything, but admitted that they were heavy sleepers. So who knows? A very odd experience. I did know that the priory had a history of hauntings. It's quite famously haunted. It's got lots of ghosts, supposedly. But I still never really expected anything to happen whilst we were there, because you're like, oh, that's something that happens to other people. But it was an interesting experience, and I'm so glad I got to stay there, really.
Oh, that's awesome. And you had your own experience there that you can relate with like you literally seen somebody else experience it as well.
So in the TV show, the only difference he had, I think, was he did go into that lounge, and there was some furniture had been dragged out, and I think the floor was scraped where it had been dragged out or something as well. So his was a little bit more extreme than our experience. But yeah.
Do you think, like, if you looked in there, that the lounge would have been moved around?
Possibly. We've both regretted that ever since. My husband still says, why did we not look in that lounge? Why didn't we just go and have a look? And I honestly can't answer why. It just felt like somewhere we shouldn't go. Like somebody who had their hand up and they were going, no, you're not coming in here, kind of thing. And subconsciously, we decided we weren't going to go in. Makes sense too, but we didn't.
Yeah, no, that would totally freak me out, in the sense, like, I'm trying to picture what it'd feel like on the face of just like almost like a brushing across that. And you were saying, like, you go into these historical places as your work. Is that your only experience?
It is strangely the only one I've had at a historic site. Yeah. Wow. Well, apart from the caves, of course, but no working. Nothing. I've had other people tell me about experiences, but personally, no. We used to stay on site at night as well sometimes, so you'd think we would have had something, but no, nothing at all, oddly.
No kidding.
But I have had some other experiences which were cat-related, interestingly. So I think cat-related. So I think this first experience must have been when I was at home. So I think I was perhaps a teenager. So I think it was probably slightly earlier than the original ghost I mentioned. And we were just sitting in our living room of our 1930s semi-detached house. Quite an old house. I don't know much about the history. And there was an electric fireplace and sofas around the room. And our two cats were asleep on the sofas. We were sitting there having a chat. And suddenly, both cats got up off the sofas, ran towards the fireplace, and started hissing, hackles up, as if they'd seen a dog or something that was really frightening them. And they were there for, I can't remember exactly, 30 seconds a minute, just hissing and hackles raised. And then eventually they stopped and just went back to sleep, went back to the sofas to sit down. They just stopped. We couldn't hear anything. We couldn't see anything. It wasn't a working fireplace. It was, like I say, it was an electric fireplace. So I don't know what that was, but I always thought that was very odd that they both got up at the same time and looked at the same spot. There was no mice or anything there. And it's the wrong sort of reaction for a cat to prey. If it was prey, they'd be trying to catch it, not hiss at it. So I always thought that was odd. But years later, so after the experience in the flat, when I'd moved on to my friend's new house that he'd brought, I don't know how that house was, perhaps Victorian, Edwardian again, similar age to the flat perhaps. Not long after we moved in, he got a couple of kittens. And I was up in my room, and it was the middle of the day, but I thought I'll just have a lie down on the bed. And I'm not somebody that falls asleep very easily. It takes me like an hour to fall asleep at night,
Feel that.
And as I was laying there, I heard this little kind of noise that a cat makes when it's greeting you. And I felt the pressure of it landing on the bed. And I thought, oh, one of the kittens has got into the room. So I opened my eyes and looked, and there was nothing there. So of course I looked all around the room. Oh, perhaps it's gone under the bed, in the cupboard, and there were no cats in there. And then I went downstairs, and they were both downstairs. So I had literally just shut my eyes. I don't think I was asleep in any way. I don't think it was a hypnopompic hallucination or anything like that, because I was awake. But it was just that noise they make and feeling of their little paws landing on the bed like they just jumped up from the floor. So that was very odd. Never happened again. Nothing else in that house happened at all. Just there was one odd little experience that I couldn't quite explain what it was.
Oh, so like just to go through it, like you felt the pressure of it jumping on your bed, and when you looked, there was nothing there.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you think there was any like cats beforehand with your roommates, or did you guys all move in together?
We all moved in together, but I don't know who had lived there before. Obviously, it would have had quite a long history. Like I say, this is the 90s, so it must have had at least 90 years of people living there. So enough time to accrue some ghosts, I suppose. But
what about what about yourself? Did you have any cats like growing up, or anything you think that may have followed you?
We did have cats, yeah. So from about 5 to when I left home, we always had cats. Always liked cats. I never had a personal one of my own till much later. So I didn't have one of my own in that house at all. So I don't know, nothing I can really think of that would have caused a cat to come.
That's fair. It's very interesting. I had somebody on the podcast explain his family cat, when it passed away, he'd feel that every night, the pressure come back.
Oh, quite reassuring, I'd have thought, though, if it's your own cat.
That's what he was saying. So going back to it, the cat situation that was the same flat you were experiencing the footsteps?
No, it was his next house. So the reason we moved out of that flat was he wanted to buy his own place. He'd been awarded some money for an accident he'd had, and then he brought a house with it and asked if we all wanted to move in with him. So he had some, ready-made flatmates to hire his rooms. So we all did, because we all like living together. And so that was where the new experience was, in this new house.
Wow. So even just like moving on, you still had like a one situation.
It was in the same road, though. So it was same road that the first experience had been, but up the other end of the road, the entirely other end of the road. So I don't know if that's got any coincidence. I know that people are always interested in whether ghosts and railway lines are linked. And there was a railway line near, but it was, can't think of the word for it, like a railway that wasn't used very much. Like once an hour, a train would go up and down it. It's like a little branch line. I think that's what they call it. So it wasn't a very busy railway line, and it stopped by, I think, about 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So it wasn't causing the footsteps or anything like that, because this was happening later. The footsteps were often quite late at night.
Wow. Everything experiencing at night. I feel like one is, who knows what the paranormal world is like, whether they can travel through such energy, or do they just move on their own and stick around where they just like it. You were talking about even experience younger in your age. Would you mind sharing that story?
Well, sorry, that was the cat story. So
the cat story was when you were even younger than 19?
Yeah, that's when I think I was about 13, 14, 15, somewhere in that range. I don't know. I can't recall now my exact age, but yeah, it was somewhere about that age. And even though it was, had a bit of history, that house, never really experienced anything much in that house. But I was talking with this chap, William Grave, who's had experiences the other day, and we had an interesting thought, because I also get sleep paralysis. I don't know if you know what that is, where you wake up and then your body has sort of disabled you, so you can't hurt yourself, but you don't quite wake up. So you're somewhere between asleep and awake. And then you experience strange things in the room. So like figures coming into the room. And I was always very happy with the scientific explanation of why it happened, because I had it for like 25 years or something, very long time. And it was only recently that somebody said, well, quite often sleep paralysis situations start in haunted locations. And I thought, well, that's an interesting idea. And so I asked Liam whether he'd had his experience in that house. And again, he was 19, like me, first time he experienced it. And that was the first place that he experienced sleep paralysis. So although I'm not sure sleep paralysis is anything paranormal, I thought that was quite an interesting link there between us. And I'd love to know if more people have ever experienced sleep paralysis in a haunted location.
Yeah, I've had a few people on that experience sleep. I always butcher the word of it. And they had the craziest situation where one saw a goat-headed man.
Oh, really? Wow.
So it's really hard to say, but it does seem like paranormal locations. It happens quite often to people.
Could just be that people are worried and not sleeping so well because they've got ghosts, I guess. But I know disrupted sleep can cause it. But I don't particularly remember having any sleepless nights in the flat. I do think I probably slept quite well. I know people always say, well, why didn't you just move out? But you haven't always got somewhere else, easily free to move into, so we just stayed there.
Oh, it's very true. I couldn't imagine if my house was haunted. Oh, man. I try to find the next scene. Has there ever been a situation that's completely creeped you out where you had to leave? Or has it always been just like kind of that normal paranormal situation?
Like I said, the arms lifting up was the closest I came to, I've got to leave, I've got to get out of here. And I think it was probably shortly after that I decided to talk to whatever this was. I'm not sure I thought it was anything at first, but as things continue to happen, you're like, okay, well, okay, I acknowledge you're here. I'm just letting you know I know that you're here, but just don't do that again because it's really creepy.
Yeah, like this needs to stop. This is too much.
Mm.
Wow, yeah, I could imagine like physical objects moving. I mean, I've heard and not like seen, but like seen things get flung across the house.
Strange sort of way. I kind of miss it in an odd way because it was such, you don't realize it at the time, but it's such a unique experience. And, I'm never going to experience anything quite the same again as that first experience of living with something so odd happening.
Yeah, and you were saying that like when you were living through it, you wish you had like cameras and stuff we had to go through. Is there anything else like you kind of wish you did living through these situations you've been through?
I wish we had all the other things that they have now, all the paraphernalia of modern, ghost investigation, or the EMF meters. And it sort of left me with a lifelong interest in the paranormal. So I do now go on, public ghost investigations, but I don't think much really happens at these events. I've been on quite a few now, and the meter goes off, or somebody's cat balls or something like that, but nothing as interesting and concrete as those strange experiences I had when I wasn't intending to have an experience. I sometimes feel that when you're looking for it, you don't find it. You need to be staying somewhere a while, and then you start to have experiences.
That's how it goes. It's always under your nose until you're not looking, right?
Yeah. I mean, I went to Jamaica in last year, I think it was, which is famously haunted. And my friend's going, you're going to have amazing experiences. I heard somebody being dragged around the bed when I was there. Nothing, nothing at all. Not even on the EMF meters. It was quiet as a church. There was nothing at all happening.
Jeez, no like vibe to it or nothing. It was just like,
not for us. No, I mean the guy running it was saying that he was feeling things, but we were just really chill about it. We were in this dark attic room that normally people don't get to go in. And he was saying, can you feel that? Something poked me in the eye, I think he said. I'm like, no, it just feels really quiet and serene in here to us. No, nothing the whole time. We stayed in the old part and in the new part, but nothing at all. So You go looking for it and it doesn't appear, and you're not looking for it, and then out they come.
It really sounds like you've been to a lot of places, not just to look for paranormal, but historic as well. What would be a place you'd want to stay like a month or two and think that something would show?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd love to go back to Michelin Priory again. I would so love to spend a month there and see what happened. But other sites, Dover Castle, I think is supposed to have a few ghosts. It's a really massive site. You know, if you're going there, if you're visiting as a member of the public to Dover, it take you a couple of days to look around it. There's so much there: World War II history, Napoleonic, medieval. You know, and I think it's supposed to have several ghosts. One of my friends had an experience there. And I remember a member of the public telling me that she used to stay in one of the rooms there. It's now a ruined house on the site, but she used to live there in like the 1970s, I think it was. And at night, she said she used to hear ghostly footsteps, horse steps going past, sort of trotting past the house at night. So it used to be a military site at the time. It was owned by the Ministry of Defence. But you know, it was the middle of the night and there shouldn't have been any horses trotting around. So yeah, I'd like to visit that at night, I think. It's got some wartime tunnels there that were used during the war. I think a lot of planning and stuff went on there because Dover's quite an important point. It's obviously the nearest point between England and France. So I suppose potentially it could have been a crossing point for the Nazis to come to England. So it was very, very important site at the time. And I think the tunnels have got ghosts as well. People certainly claim to see them down there.
Oh, lots of history in that. And not just that, like you have personal friends that have experiences.
Mm.
I can see why you'd want to spend a while there.
I think my friend said she saw a medieval lady just walking past. So she was doing a medieval reenactment. And she knew who the people in her group were. And she saw this lady walk past that wasn't a member of the public or one of her friends. So yeah. I'm not sure if I'm quoting her directly very well, but yeah, something like that. A medieval person, I think it was.
Oh man, that's so cool. I've never experienced like go out to paranormal places and do this, so it's so great to hear like your guys' experiences or close friends to go through. Is there anything else you'd like to share to other paranormal investigators?
Could you mean like other experiences or?
Yeah, if you have another experience you'd like to share or some wise words.
Well, I think the only other things I've had have been much smaller. You know, I've been to quite a few investigations, and I've always found it interesting when, you know, the glass moves or something like that, or the table tips, but I'm never quite sure. You're never quite sure, are you, if that's somebody else or not moving it. So I still try to keep an open mind that it could just be an ordinary explanation. I always try to think of that first. But the things I've shared today are the things that I haven't been able to really think of an explanation for. You know, you could say that the fire alarm going off was a faulty fire alarm, but it only happened the once, I think, the fire alarm. And it was just together with all the other things that happened that made it an odd experience, I think.
Yeah, especially when you can't explain it. Like you've lived around that fire alarm, so it to be set off the way you explained it brings up questions, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really glad you got to share your you came on here and shared your experiences with us there, Karen.
No, it's great. It's great to hear everybody's experiences. The one thing I'd say is, you know, everybody's so afraid to share their experiences. So I am an author as well, but I write about ghosts, and the members of the public, they feel that I'm a safe space to share their stories, I think, because I write about ghosts. And so what they say, why do you write about ghosts? I say, well, I had a ghostly experience. And then they say, oh, okay, oh, this is my experience. So you're somebody I can tell safely. But a lot of the time people are so afraid to share what it is they've experienced. But I think if we all just, you know, step forward, share our experiences, you know, perhaps people will be less afraid to share what's happened to them. And hopefully you'll get more people on your podcast.
Fingers crossed. I do get that a lot. It's like when you experience it, like we kind of had that connection and understanding of things that can't be explained. And it's weird the shutdown with people who've never experienced stuff like that.
They don't want to know, no.
No, there is no conversation about it.
I have had people that say, oh, no, I don't believe in ghosts. You know, I never had an experience, except I did see my dead mother or my dead neighbour. And you're like, is that not a ghost? And they're like, oh, no, I must have just hallucinated it. I'm okay. So they've had an experience, but they've just immediately sidelined it as not a ghost because they don't believe in anything paranormal. My husband still doesn't believe in the paranormal, even though we had that experience together. But
really, he doesn't believe in it.
No. He acknowledges that strange things happen, but I think his theory is that it's perhaps, if it is anything, it's more to do with us and something coming from us, perhaps energies of some sort, but not the souls of dead people or anything like that. He doesn't believe in life after death, or so he thinks it could be something, but just not the traditional idea of what a ghost is.
Yeah, that's interesting. My wife is a very the three monkeys, you know, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil.
Oh, yeah.
So that's fun listening to those people and try to explain what you've been through.
It is.
And I appreciate you hopping on. It's been about 40 minutes here.
Is it really? Wow.
I've really enjoyed your stories, Karen. I can't thank you enough for hopping on and sharing them. Is there anything you want to plug in? You mentioned your book there. Did you want to plug it into the viewers?
Yes. So it's, I've got a copy here. So I've got two books. The Curious Life of Ada Baker is the first one. The Curious Case of the Woman in White is the second one. I also have a podcast where I interview authors who write about the strange, mysterious, fantastical, ghosts, folklore, horror, fantasy, and anything a little outside the realms of normal. So quite often it's, fiction. So I've interviewed a few people that have written books about ghosts as well. So I've just done Liam Grave that I mentioned, which is why it's so fresh in my head. Ian Simmons, who's the news editor of the 14 Times, I interviewed him as well about his book Ghosts of London. So yeah, it's been interesting chatting with other authors about their writing and their experiences. So it's called Pandora's Library, if anyone's interested in it.
Pandora's Library. I'm going to have to dive even deeper into it. That's got to be awesome to go and talk to other authors about their experiences and even your own.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, it's lovely.
Sorry, what's that?
It's lovely. Thank you for having me. It's been great talking to you.
Nice talking to you. Have a good day.
You too.
A big thanks to Karen for sharing her haunting experiences with us tonight. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a follow wherever you're listening from. And leave us a review if you enjoy these ghost stories as much as we do. Got a chilling encounter of your own? I'd love to hear it. Send your story to oopsallghosts@gmail.com and you might hear it on a future episode. Until next time, keep your lights low, your mind open, and remember, sometimes it's not just the house settling in.